Welcome back to a new type of video on this channel. Today we're going to be talking about specifically SCP-166, the changes made to her, and why I think some of these changes are stupid. Probably not for the reasons you think, mainly for pre-made plot reasons that haven't been changed along with the changes to the SCP that makes it that opens up plot holes that seem unrealistic. So, let's jump right into it. So when I learned about the changes, I was making an SCP one-shot tabletop system. And I wanted to put in SCP-166 and Dr. Clef and kind of make a story in between them. And that's when I learned about the changes made to SCP-166. And some of it I liked, and some of it I disliked because I thought there was too many gaps in the plot. So to give a summary of the story of this SCP and what has changed, first I'll talk about the changes. No. First I'll summarize the SCP and the story they've gone through. So, SCP-166, aka the Teenage Succubus, is the daughter of Dr. Clef and a nature goddess who became a threat entity and was neutralized in something called the Cornwall Incident. The Cornwall Incident was basically Dr. Clef going on a mission and finishing off his wife, but he couldn't bring himself to take out his own daughter, so instead he brought his daughter, SCP-166, to a convent that he trusted, and left her there for about, let's say she was 1 at the time, for about 15 years before she was discovered at age of 16. And at age 16, she was brought into the SCP care, and that was the deal Dr. Clef made with the people at SCP. Now, why do the changes made to her make a difference? Well, in the original, she was discovered because one of the other nuns had brought in a man, and that man saw her and gained uncontrollable lust after SCP-166 and tried to attack her, which is how she was brought to the attention of the SCP facility, people, whatever. Now, this makes sense with what we know. She has the anomalous property originally to attract all men just uncontrollably towards her. She's also religious because she grew up at a convent, and this troubles her. Seems pretty sound to me. Why does the changes made doesn't make sense? Well, in a convent with all women, it makes sense that she managed to live a pretty normal life. All the images that are in circulation here are the changed version, because it seemed more appropriate than showing the old version. Because in the old version, she was pretty much nude. And by pretty much, I mean, yeah, she was just nude. But she looked human. She didn't have any different features. She just looked normal. She looked beautiful, normal. But which makes sense for like how she was able to pass in the convent for so long. Now, here's where the problems start arising with these changes. With the changes, her anomalous property has changed as well as her physical appearance. Now, within a 15-meter radius of her, plants can start uncontrollably growing from pretty much anywhere. Phones, whatever. Electronics, doors, whatever. Just growing. Now, this doesn't make a whole ton of sense, but this is just the tip of the iceberg. Also, it's stated that someone who was a smoker, who hadn't smoked for weeks, entered her containment and she had a severe asthma attack because he had smoked weeks ago. Now, this is one of the big ones. The other one is, look at her. She's got horns, she's got hooves, she's got reindeer ears. How does something like this stay secret? Now, these 3 points are going to be in a culmination to something that doesn't make any goddamn sense because of how many plot holes are poked into it. So, in the revised version, she still stays at the same convent, but it is a public convent where nuns apparently can just bring people in. And and this is a place where she overheard one of the nuns talking about who her mother was. So she has an idea of it. So these nuns aren't the most loose-lipped things, and would understand if she was a normal girl just like hiding out in the crowd, but she's literally got antlers. Like, how is she able to move around the convent so freely with this not even being a problem? In a place, a secret can only be kept between one person. The more people you bring into a secret, it's no longer a secret. By the time you have a convent of like 200 nuns, all knowing that there's the daughter of a forest god around, you think everyone's going to keep that secret for 15 years? I don't think so. It doesn't make any sense, especially when she looks like this. Like, come on. It's stupid. Also with like, the environment around there would have had to be the most crisp, clean air possible. Like, I don't know where this convent was. It must have been in the middle of fucking nowhere, and no one must have been able to use any cleaning products anywhere in this, or else she would have had a fit and almost died because of the toxins. Ooh. Because someone who hadn't smoked in weeks walks into her cell and she has an asthma attack. That's so little. That's ridiculous. Not a single animal on the planet would have a reaction to that. But apparently she has such a violent reaction that it had to have medical attention. It's ridiculous. There needs to be an air purifier in her containment. She lived in just a convent. How the hell did she stay in a convent if she needs a superpowered air purifier in her own containment? Everything around her starts getting reduced to like a state of nature, and trees and plants start growing from it in 15 meters. That's a lot. 1 meter is about 3 feet, so in about 150 radius from her, I'm sure like she wasn't kept in the basement or anything because she was allowed to move throughout the convent, so she probably had an actual room. So people didn't find it weird how one side of the convent just had vines all over the side of the walls and started crumbling away, and no one could have a phone within 15 meters without it turning into a plant and just decomposing. There's no way you could have kept her secret or alive in the new backstory. Now, how could this get changed so it still fits and it still works with what is going on? How would I change SCP-166 so that we can change it away from her being just an object of lust towards her being something a little bit more tangible without breaking the whole backstory? Well, here's what I would do. To make her fit into with the convent, I would first get rid of her whole appearance. There's 2 ways I can do this without changing it completely. Either one, I would have it so at the age of 16, when she was noticed, and maybe that's when the convent had to seek out a doctor to figure out what was wrong with her, and that's when the SCP Foundation figured out who she was and took her in. I would either say at age of 16, when she came of age, she would start growing the antlers and the hooves, and her body started changing at that point where like she comes to sexual maturity, and then she starts to change and gain anomalous properties. But this wasn't stated. I feel like it would be a good addition to it. That way it makes sense how she was able to stay hidden at a convent for so long. I would completely remove the thing where she's super sensitive to any toxin, because honestly, I think that's just stupid. It might be a little bit of flavor, but honestly, it causes more problems than it creates an interesting story. It's just dumb. It's one of the things I omitted when I put this into my SCP one-shot, because you can't take her literally anywhere if she's going to be hypersensitive to literally everything. It just makes her, it makes it stupid. Like, it doesn't make any sense. The returning to nature thing. I think that is a bit weird. I think it's okay, and you can still keep that in because as long as you don't have the other things on top of that, it works a little bit better. But I would have had her anomalous properties also springing up around the time she hit 16. So basically, she seemed normal until this point in time, which is basically what the previous edition was, because her anomalous property could only affect men. So that way, she basically seemed like a normal person until she came in contact with a man. And being at an all-female convent, it makes sense that that could have gone 15 years without being noticed. So I would have her anomalous properties awake at this time. My other way to add her appearance, but also keep it as something that makes sense, is having her be having a way so she still looks the way she does, but she has an anomalous property where people perceive her looking normal unless she chooses to turn it off or on. So she legitimately looks like that, but people just look at her like she is normal. I think there's way too many plot holes in the change. I like her new design. I think it's really cool. And I get trying to go away from that whole nude object of sex persona that she had before. But I just don't think it was done correctly. It was done in a very sloppy way that didn't make a ton of sense. So I feel like some changes need to be made to who she is and what she is in order to make her fit more cohesively with her own backstory. I'm not even saying making her fit in with like the SCP organization and the lore, because there is none. It's highly flexible. But the one thing that didn't get changed and isn't flexible is her pre-established backstory. If she doesn't fit with it, nothing else story-wise makes sense. Her relationship with Clef and how he wants to be more of a father figure, it just doesn't fit. Because why would Clef leave his daughter if she had antlers and hooves with just a convent? I get he trusts the convent, but he must have known that it would have been way too risky leaving her in such a public place. It would have made more sense, especially if she had such a reactions around any sort of toxic materials. It wouldn't make sense that he left her with strangers to have them figure it out. He would have definitely taken her with him if this was the true backstory. But I like the changes overall. I just think there's a bit too many holes in them, and there can just be some writing to patch it up. But anyway, that's my thoughts. Leave a comment down below on what your favorite SCP is, and leave a like on this video if you liked it. This is kind of new content for me. Originally, when I thought about doing SCP content, I didn't really think I could add anything to it, but this is something I felt passionate about talking about, so I decided to give it a try. Let me know if you like this kind of content. You can show me that with just putting a like on the video. And subscribe if you want to see more content like this, or maybe not. It depends on how well received this is. Anywho, see y'all in the next video. Bye-bye.